My name is Dana Pointer. I'm here on behalf of Commissioner Larry Rogers Jr. of the Cook County Board of Review. And of course, your mayor made sure that we got out here to service you guys, make sure we can teach you guys a little bit about the property tax appeal process and service you. The mayor has already collected over 600 forms from the taxpayers of Tinley Park, which cover Rich Township, Orland Township, and Bremen Township. We're going to talk about some of those closing dates and a lot of information that you need to know. So before we get started, we are going to let your favorite mayor say a few words.
Thanks, Dana. First of all, we want to thank Commissioner Larry Rogers and Dana Pointer for putting this special event together for us. They're already scheduled to come at the end of August for other in Tinley Park, but they're doing this one special for us, so I really appreciate it. Thank you to our village attorney, Mike Delgado, that helped us set this up as well. I want to thank our board for coming, Clerk Nancy O'Connor, Trustee Colleen Sullivan, and Trustee Ken Shaw. Thank you. And most importantly, in the back right corner, who never likes being recognized, putting this all together all the time as she's shaking her head, is Lisa Valley in the right. Thank you, Lisa. We were all shocked when we got that tax bill in the mail, and most people know the reasons, some don't, so that's kind of why we have Dana coming from Cook County. If you look at your tax bill, depending on where you live, most of it is coming from your school district. So if you live in Rich Township, it's like 77.59% of your tax bill comes from your school. It's only just over 9% from the village, which isn't very much. If you're in Bremen Township, which is right around 75% of your tax bill is coming from your school district, your village is just over 11. And if you're in Orland Township, that's the lowest of the school districts. They're under 70%, and the village is 13% on average for if you live in Orland Township. So the village has done their due diligence on this to keep it low. We were one of the only taxing bodies that did a 0% increase when we just redid our budget. So thank you to our board. Where everyone increased it 5% or more, we stayed at a 0% increase because we know this was coming from the assessor. And so everyone understands, and please correct me if I'm wrong, the Board of Review is the best place to appeal. They supersede the assessor's office if they feel their assessment's too high. They can statutorily send them a letter and let them know that they are lowering it, and the letter will go to the resident. So the assessor's office cannot deny the Board of Review. Larry Rogers is at the top of the food chain, and if him and his staff see that it's too high, he can lower it. There's nothing for you to do. Dana and their team will send a letter to them, and then you'll also get a letter with the reduction. Whether the assessor likes it or not, there's nothing that they could do to change that. So that's why we have the Cook County Board of Review here, Larry Rogers' office, who's the best. So Dana, we want to thank you and your team for coming again, and if you could take it from here, that'd be great.
All right, thank you again. If we can try to scoot in some, we have some people still standing outside. We do have a couple seats up here for seniors. If it's anyone with a disability or has a hard time standing, we have two or three chairs up here that they can sit in. And if you have an empty seat next to you, just raise your hand so someone can sit. If you want to sit there, ma'am. And just fill in as much as you can. I'm going to try to get you guys out of here as quickly as possible. I know you guys want to get home after a long day of work. All right? So we'll give people a chance to file in a bit, and we'll go ahead and get started. All right, guys. So one of the main reasons that people appeal are because their assessment on their property is too high. How many people's assessment is too high? Everybody in the room. So I think everybody's in the right place. All right? Another reason to appeal is if you have recently purchased your property. So when we say a recent purchase, we're talking about a purchase that has occurred in the past 3 years. All right? So say, for instance, you paid $300,000 for your home. and the assessor's office is saying your property is worth $500,000. That's a discrepancy, right? That would be a reason to appeal. If you have recently refinanced or you have an appraisal that has been completed, you can use that as evidence. You're going to hear me say the number 3 a lot of times during this presentation. 3 is the magic number. Your appraisal has to be completed in the past 3 years. All right? Now, if your property is currently vacant, if you've had any fire, flood damage, or your property has been demolished, these are all reasons to appeal. If your property is demolished, it should be assessed at vacant land. All right? If you've had any fire or flood damage, you would have insurance claims. You would have pictures, a fire report, police report. All of these things can be used as evidence for an appeal with us at the Board of Review. Now, before I go into the property tax cycle, one thing I want to let you guys know is the tax bill that you all got that's due August the 1st, we cannot do anything about that tax bill. Your taxes are paid 1 year in arrears. So the taxes you're paying now are from 2023. So what you guys are doing with us today, filling out this paperwork, is for what is to come. All right? You're getting a head start to make sure that you're putting your bid in early. All right? So as the mayor said, the assessments start with the Cook County Assessor's Office. He assesses every single property in Cook County. All right? We do not do that. They also have an appeals process, and they handle exemptions, which are the things that save you guys money. So we're going to talk about some of those exemptions as well today. Okay? Then after the assessor comes us, the Board of Review. As the mayor said, if you are dissatisfied with the number that the assessor has placed on your property, you come to us and say, hey, it's not fair, and we will look and see if we can make a change for you. At the Board of Review, we have a 60% approval rating. So that would be a reason that you guys want to appeal. I hear a lot from people saying, oh, at the assessor I appeal and I always get denied. So we are that extra line of defense. But the only way that we can look at your property is if you fill out the complaint form. If you don't fill out the form, we don't look at it. All right? Now, once you go from there, the Department of Revenue comes into play where they add the equalization factor. So, as many of you know, Cook County is the largest county in Illinois. The level of assessment for residential properties in Cook County is 10%, and for commercial properties is 25%. When you go to other parts of the state, they are at 33 1/3%. So that equalization factor is used to make it fair for everyone throughout the state. All right? Now from there, you go to your local governments. So as your mayor said, they did not make any increases. You have the levies that are in play for what your village, city, or town needs to operate. Right? So you, as he said, the schools get the majority of the money. Then you have your fire department, your police department, water reclamation, all of these things that are needed to make sure that you all have services and so that these things can be done. Now, once these levies are complete, then the Cook County clerk is put in play where they determine the tax rates, which is another thing that's very important to your tax bill. We're going to talk about that some more as well. And then from there, it is sent to Maria Pappas, who is the treasurer, and she prints and mails the forms. All right? That is the cycle. Now, as we stated, the assessor's office assesses the property and they handle exemptions. Another form that you need to be familiar with the assessor's office is a certificate of error. That form, they can go back up to 3 years and correct any errors that they have made. So if you look at your tax bill, you're missing exemptions, that would be a reason to fill out a certificate of error. If there was an issue in the description of your property, any of those things, you can fill out a certificate of error. Once it is completed and approved, if you overpaid, they will send you a check back for your overpayment, and that can take 90 days to 120 days. All right? Now, we're going to talk about some of the most common exemptions. One thing I want you guys to make sure, do not get any exemptions on your income property. All right? Exemptions are only for your primary residence. So if the assessor finds out you're getting an exemption on your income property, they're going to send you a nice letter. Hey, Mr. and Mrs. Jones, you've been getting this exemption for 7 years. You owe us $15,000 in a lump sum. And if you don't pay it, they put a lien on your property. So again, only get your exemptions where you live. All right? Now, the first exemption that everyone should have at least is your homeowner's exemption. All right? This, as long as you live in the house, this is your primary residence, you can get the homeowner's exemption. For my people who are senior citizens, if you are 65 years of age or older, you can apply for the senior citizens exemption. You must live in the property and be at least 65 years of age as of January 1st. So if you turn 65 this year on January the 2nd, that means you have to wait till the next tax year to take advantage of that exemption. So keep that in mind. All right? Now for my senior citizens who are on a fixed income and your income is less than $65,000, and we're talking about the total household income. So if you have a husband living with you, you guys are both getting a pension or anything like that, all of those things would be added together. And as long as it's under $65,000, you can apply for that exemption. Now, one thing the mayor had mentioned that he was hearing that people could lose some of their savings, their senior free savings, if you appeal with us. And in some cases, that can be true. All right? So, for my senior citizens in the room who are on a freeze, if you have been on the freeze for 3 years or more, you do not want to file an appeal with us. The reason being, when you turn 65, whatever the value of your property is frozen. So even though it may fluctuate from sales in the area, yours is going to stay at a pretty steady rate, so it will not fluctuate as much as others who may not be on that fixed income. All right? So just say, for instance, you're 70 years old, you've been on it for 5 years, and you appeal with us and we give you a reduction. Instead of you being 70, you'll be 65 again and starting over. So we don't want you to lose any money. So please keep that in mind. All right? Now, a couple of other exemptions that we have. One is for our returning veterans. If you are a veteran coming back from active duty in the past year, you can apply for the returning veterans exemption. If you are a disabled veteran with a service-related disability, you can apply for the disabled veterans exemption. And if you are deemed over 70% disabled by the VA, you pay no taxes on a property that is $250,000 in value or less. So say your property is worth $300,000. You would have that exemption for that first $250,000, and then you'd be taxed on the additional $50,000. All right? All of these exemptions can be found on the Cook County Assessor's website, and many of them can be filled out online. Okay? You can also go to your township assessors. Again, some of you are from Rich Township, some are from Bremen, and some are from Orland. All of your township assessors have this paperwork and can assist you with any of these exemptions. Okay? Now, I want to show you guys about calculating your tax bill. You all should know these things. Some people don't know how to do it. We want to give you as much information so that you can make informed decisions and you kind of see what's going on. So in this particular calculation, the value of this property is $250,000. So 10% is what the level of assessment is for residential properties. 10% of $250,000 is what? $25,000. So that is the number that we at the Board of Review can make changes to inside this entire calculation. we make changes to your assessed value. Now, once you continue to go down this calculation, we talked about the state equalizer, which changes annually. We also talk about exemptions. Now, in this calculation, this homeowner could only get the homeowner's exemption. And the value of that reduction is $10,000 in assessed value, not dollars. All right? And then each area has its own tax rate. In this sample, we use 21%. So a $250,000 property in an area with a tax rate of 21%, they're paying about $13,700 in taxes. Now, how many of you know where Park Forest is? Park Forest has the highest taxes in Cook County at 43%. So I want you to think about that last slide I showed you where the tax rate was 21%. Double that for the same $250,000 home. That's major. Major. One of the reasons that this is happening is because there are not as many commercial and industrial properties to pick up the tax rate in some of those areas. All right? Tinley, it has a pretty healthy commercial market, which kind of helps you guys to keep that tax rate lower than places like Park Forest. If you ever want to look at this, the Cook County Clerk has an annual report that they publish where they will let you know how much your tax rate is, how much it has fluctuated for the past 3 years. All of that data can be found on the Cook County Clerk's website, which is www.cookcountyclerk.com. All right? Now, this is your first installment tax bill. Many of you know this tax bill is a 55% estimate of what you paid the prior year. All right? Also, the decision from us at the Board of Review does not affect this first installment tax bill. Now, your second installment tax bill, this is the one you want to pay attention to. There are several things on here that I want to point out to you. First, at the top of your tax bill, this is where all the detailed information of your property will be. So your PIN number, the number you use to file an appeal, is like your social security number for your property. You're going to use that number today when you fill out an appeal with us. All right? Also up there will let you know what your township is, what classification your property is. So all of that detailing information will be at the top. The next section has been updated by Maria Pappas. All right? This section here is now showing how much more you're paying from last year and more detailing information about where your tax dollars are going. The next thing I want you to pay attention to is the tax calculator. This section is very important. This is only on your second installment tax bill. Inside this section, you will see what the value of your property is. You will see what your tax rate is, and you will also see your exemptions. If you see a $0 amount next to an exemption that you should be receiving, that means what? You're not getting it. So that means you need to contact the Cook County Assessor's Office and fill out the form I was telling you guys about earlier, the certificate of error. And they will correct that exemption to make sure you're getting it. The other thing I want you to pay attention to on here is the important messages box. Inside this box is where you will find if you're due a refund, if you owe taxes. Now the font in this section is probably a 5. So you might want to put your glasses on to check it. But you want to look in that section too, especially if you're due a refund, you want to get that money. Okay? All right. Now, one thing I want to talk to you guys about is one of the errors that the assessor's office may or may not have made on your property. But there were over 4,000 taxpayers who did have issues with the calculations of their exemptions. So I'm going to show you how to calculate your homeowner's exemption to make sure yours is correct. All right? Now you remember in the calculation I told you the deduction for your homeowner's exemption is $10,000 in assessed value. So what you will do is take that $10,000, look in your tax calculator box at your local tax rate. This tax rate is 6.262%. You are going to then multiply that by the $10,000 to tell you what your deduction should be for your homeowner's exemption. So this taxpayer only got $25.67 taken off of their tax bill when it should have been $626.20. That's a major difference. So use these tools so that you can make sure that you're equipped to look at some of these things so that you can go back to the assessor and dispute something if there is an error. Now we're going to talk about us at the Cook County Board of Review. Again, you come to us if you are dissatisfied. One of the first type of things we use in the appeal is we look at comparable properties. And when we talk about comparable properties, we're looking at properties that are similar in age, square footage, location, and identification. So if your property is new construction, I don't want to compare that to a 100-year-old home. If your home is 2,500 square feet, I don't want to compare that to a 7,000 square foot home. I want to find something as similar to yours as possible. We also want to look within a 1-mile radius of your property to see what the trend is and what's going on. And we do that as well when we use sales data. That's the second approach that we use. So we will look at arm's length transactions that have occurred in the past 3 years to see what the trend is. And we will use those accordingly. All right? And then again, if you guys have vacancy, flood, or fire issues or damage, we want to see fire reports, insurance claim, pictures of the damage. If your property is vacant, if you have a for sale sign, MLS listing, whatever you may have, use those things as evidence. If you don't have them today, that's okay. You'll be able to mail it in or you can upload it. We'll talk about that a little bit more in a minute. Now, if you own commercial property, if your commercial property is in your name, you can file the appeal today. But if your commercial property is in an LLC or any type of business entity, you must have an attorney. All right? Now, if it's in your name, if it's owner occupied, which means your business is in there, you would submit an appraisal that occurred within the past 3 years. If your commercial property is leased or rented, we want to see a rent roll. We want to see 3 years of scheduled leads from the IRS. We want to see pictures if it's vacant. Any chance that you're trying to mitigate your losses and get someone in there. We want to see all of that information. Now, for those of you who have condominiums, with condominiums is very specific. We're looking at sales that have occurred in your building within the past 3 years. We're going to look at all of those sales and the percentage of ownership that your unit is given. And we come up with a value for the entire building and move forward that way. If you have a condominium that is a smaller condominium with maybe 5 units, 6 units or less, we will look at those sometimes on a comparative basis if there are not any sales in the building. Now, it's a couple things that you should know. Once your township opens, it is open for a 30-day period. Once that 30-day period has passed, that's it. So, right now, we are in what we call a pre-file session. And we're going to talk about the dates in a little bit. But we have a 30-day period to work on each group of townships. And then we have to move forward so you guys can get the tax bills on time and things like that. So you guys know in the past couple of years, your tax bills have been late. This is the first time it's getting back on track. So we're trying to keep those things on track. Now, all 3 commissioner staffs are going to view your file. As long as 2 commissioner staffs agrees, The appeal will move forward, and then if you've got a reduction, it will be reflected on your second installment tax bill. The whole process takes about 6 to 8 weeks before your decision is rendered. All right? So keep that in mind, and we'll talk about the dates as well. Now, some of you may live in Bremen. How many people are in Bremen? All right. Bremen Township closes on September 3rd. We do not have a date yet for Orland or for Rich. So that means you're still in pre-file period and you still have time. So for those of you who are in Bremen, once we close on September the 3rd, that's when your 6 to 8 week countdown begins. All right? So just say, for instance, Rich doesn't open until October the 1st. After 30 days, that's when we'll begin work on those. So for right now, if you live in any of those other townships, we're going to be holding your appeal until the official date opens. All right? And all of these dates are also on the Cook County Board of Review website, which is www.cookcountyboardofreview.com. Now, I'm going to take questions at the end. All right, so first we're going to go through this form that everybody has. Some of you all have filled this out already. Some of you may have questions. We're going to answer some of those questions while I'm explaining this. But like I say, keep all your questions till the end and we'll get to them. First things first. The first thing you want to put on this form is your PIN number, your property index number that is on top of your tax bill. It's on top of both your first and second installment. You're going to put those numbers at the top. Some of you guys may have 2 PIN numbers for your property. Your property may be on 2 lots, or you may have a PIN number for your garage. If you have a second PIN number, you are going to put that on the lines to the side. You'll just put that on line number 1, the second PIN. Do not put any comparables on this form. This is only for your information. The next section is name of appellant. You guys are the appellant. So this is where all your mailing address information is going to go so that we can get all correspondence back to you. All right? If you are appealing your mailing address, you're going to check the box that says same as above. All right? If you are appealing another address, write on that address line what that is. All right? The next section is description of property, and this is what type of property you are appealing. So if you're appealing a single family home, you're going to check that box. If you are filing on a commercial property, whatever type of property it is, check the box. If you have more than one property, you're going to need a form for each property. So if you purchased your property from 2021 up until now, we consider that a recent purchase. So we want the date that you purchased and then the price. If you purchased before 2021, no need to put your sales data down. All right? The next one is the status of appellant. Most of you guys are going to be the owner of the property. You're going to check that owner box. If you are liable for the taxes, check that box. The executor, beneficiary, whatever applies to you, please check that box. All right, the next question is, do you plan to submit additional evidence? Now, some people, they may have a binder ready with comparable properties, appraisals, all of those things. If you have that, great. You can turn that in to us today or mail it in. If you don't have any evidence and you want us to just look at your property and see if there is room for a reduction, you don't have to submit one thing. So you would check the box that says no, and we will do the work for you. Or if you do have evidence, check yes, and we will accept those things from you. The next one is in red, and it says, I request a hearing before the Cook County Board of Review. So in the past, people would have to come downtown to City Hall, pay it's like $50 now for parking, and then come up to the office, talk to someone like myself or my colleagues, and explain your issue. Since COVID, we now do them on the phone. So you would get a phone call from us and you could explain what was going on. And I tell most people, if it's not an extenuating circumstance where it's a really unique situation, you do not have to have a hearing. But if you do want one, you can check that box. We will send you a letter in the mail to let you know the date and time of your hearing. And an analyst will call you and you can discuss your specific issues or concerns with the analyst. And also the analyst will be the one who is working your file as well. So that is an option that you have. And then the next thing that you need to do, which is the most important thing, which a lot of people don't do, is sign the form. Sign where it says signature of appellant or attorney. If you do not sign the form is not valid. So that means we can't move forward. So then I'd have to give you a call. Hey, Mr. and Mrs. Jones, you didn't sign the form. I have to send you a new one, get you online to fill it out. So please, if you are sending this in, whether it's via mail or leaving it with us today, please make sure you sign the form. All right? Now, we're going to talk about filing online. Some people prefer to file online. One of the benefits of filing your appeal online is that you will be able to save all the data. So the decision from us will be saved. Any evidence you submitted will be saved, and you'll be able to go back and look at those things over time. All right? So if you do want to file online, you can go to our website, which is www.cookcountyboardofreview.com. And all of that is in the pamphlets and stuff that you got just in case, okay? You can either click in the middle where it says file an appeal or submit appeal at the top. Now, once you get to this next screen, you are going to make sure that you log in and register. Some of you may already have a username and password, so you'll be able to put that in. But if you haven't, log in and register. It's more beneficial. We do not want you to file your appeal as a guest, because if you file as a guest, you won't be able to track anything. If you wanted to upload something later, you wouldn't be able to do any of those things. All right? So take the extra minute to put your name, information, and create a username and password. Now, when I told you guys you can track your information, once you get to this next screen, you'll have a tab at the top that says My Appeals. That is where all of your data will be saved. All right? So that is one of the benefits of filing with us. Now, once you're ready to submit appeal, you will click that marker, and then you'll be brought to this section. All right? They're going to ask you what type of appeal. Your appeal is that your property is over-assessed. All right? The next thing you need on here is your PIN number. You're going to put the PIN number in that next section, and then you will be able to click Next and go on to the next page where you can either upload data or just move forward with submitting your appeal. Very simple process. And then if you guys get lost or confused, if you go to the top where it says click here, you'll be able to go to a tutorial to help you out, and it also has frequently asked questions to help you guys along the way. Now, these are some of the events. The next event we have is going to be at the Country Club Hills Pavilion on the 13th. We will be servicing people, and that's also Rich and Bremen Township. So if you guys know anyone who wants to come who may have missed tonight, that will be the event next week. And then we will also be at the Tinley Park Convention Center on August the 28th at 6 p.m. And again, if you know anybody in those townships, we can service them all at any of those places. And again, that will be before Bremen Township closes on what day? Yes, September 3rd. You guys got it. All right, so I want you guys to save this number. This number is also in your trifold packet, all right? This is the number that Commissioner Rogers created so that people who may not have access to computers, laptops, or desktops are able to file an appeal from their phone. All right, you guys know sometimes when you're filling out certain information, especially government stuff, it's hard to do on your phone. It's not really compatible. So if you text this number, 872-345-4747, and type the word file, F-I-L-E, you can file the appeal right from your phone. A lot of people have, their evidence in their phone. They use their phone to take pictures. You got your email on there. You can do all of that stuff from your phone. And then for those of you who would like to join Commissioner Rogers' texting service, where you can find out about these events, the events I just showed you, and also know when townships are opening and closing, if you text that same number, text the word EASY JOIN, EZJOIN, then you'll start to receive updates on when townships are opening, closing, and also other events. Now, all of this contact information again is in your packets. If you did forget your username and password and you need to have it reset, you can call the phone number 312-603-5542 and they can reset that information for you. All right? So at this point, we're going to take questions. I need everyone to be patient. Raise your hand, ask those questions, and then we'll get you guys out of here. All right? Also, too, when you guys are ready to turn in your forms, you can turn them in. There's a basket over here at the table, and we also have some staff that's walking around as well. So let's start with those questions. Yes, ma'am?
On my tax bill, the first thing it says that it's $1,400. It is TIF, Tinley Park, Main Street North, to a tune of $1,456.44. What is that?
So that was a special project where money was used for something in that TIF area. Like I say, those specific things, you can talk to your mayor. He knows about those, and also your state, and your city treasurers and things like that. They know about there. It's some type of project that was going on where they used some TIF money and needed to build something or something of that nature. Yeah. So she said her tax bill went up $2,000 in the second half. And yes, that may be a lot, but depending on how much the project was worth that they're saying, that comes into play. The other thing I wanted to ask you guys, how many of you go to these budget meetings for your school districts, for the library, for the water reclamation, for the fire department? How many go to those budget meetings? That's a problem. So if you go to these budget meetings as a taxpayer in the area, you have some say. You can ask them, oh, we're asking for this amount of money, or you're asking for this. Why? Why is it so much? And when the taxpayers start to go to some of these meetings, it makes a difference. It makes a difference because a lot of time people don't go and they pass these budgets unchecked. But as your mayor said, they didn't make as many changes as in some of these other areas because legally they can ask for at least a 5% increase. And as he said, they did not. They left it at 0. So that was a lot of forward moving by your mayor and some of the officials out here to try not to stick it to you too bad, okay? So that's something to keep in mind. But you also want to go to these budget meetings. So, like I say, everybody in here had a problem with their taxes, but I didn't see anyone raise their hand and say that they were at any of these budget meetings. And you are the ones that can make some changes to those. So just keep that in mind. Yes, ma'am?
Earlier when you were talking about exemptions and you made a comment and said, don't do it because then they will tell you you need to owe $15,000.
Yes. So she's talking about the exemptions when I said do not get any exemptions on your income property. So your primary residence where you live, you can get your exemptions there. You can have up to 4 exemptions on your primary residence at one time. So you can get that, but not on your income property. All right? So that's even if you own another house and you're renting that out. that's income property. If you have a business, if you have an apartment complex, anything like that, industrial space, those are all considered income property. All right? Yes, sir.
The budget meeting taking place.
Okay, he asks, how do you know when and where? These are things, they're posted. They can't just have the meetings. Now, I don't know specifically where, but I would say reach out to your mayor's office. They're very on top of things, and they should be able to let you know. Let them know, hey, will we be able to have this put on our website, you know, or whatever that you guys may go to on a regular basis. I know they send out newsletters and things like that. So maybe that's something that you could bring up. I'm not sure where all of those things may be posted. Okay? Yes, ma'am.
I believe, okay, so I live in Orland Township, neighborhood 103. Our land value was reassessed over double, so 132%. Now, the neighborhoods adjacent to us, the land values went up 15%. So I believe that this was a mistake with the assessor's office. There's over 800 homeowners that were affected by this. So, and when you file an appeal with the Board of Review, you're expected to use comps in your neighborhood, but our entire neighborhood was affected by this. So what is your suggestion on how we can get this corrected?
So, this has been another thing. We talked about the incorrect calculations of the exemptions, and another thing that the assessor did was, with the land values, land is harder to dispute. Usually in areas, the land value is pretty much the same. It may be $2.50 per land unit. But what he's done in some cases was lower the improvement value and up the land, which makes it harder to make changes. So we at the board are getting creative and trying to think of other ways to look at this. That's why we look at some sales data and things of that nature to kind of see what's going on. But as long as he is skewing these numbers, this is going to be a reoccurring thing, unfortunately. So, again, with us, in addition to just the comparables, we're going to look at sales data, and we can make adjustments based on the different properties, because we're looking at your property individually. With the assessor's office, they're looking at everything on a macro type of scale, where they're looking at everything collectively. We're looking micro at yours specifically. So those are some of the things that we're doing. Yes, sir. Yes. So he asks, what is the income level for senior freeze? $65,000 total income. So if correct, anyone who lives under the roof. So if it's you, your wife, and your kid, well, that's something you need to speak with. No, you shouldn't kick him out. So and I understand you're frustrated. Well, that's something that we didn't do. So one thing you might want to do is talk to your senator and state reps, because this is something that could be changed in legislation. Initially, a few years ago, the income was $55,000 for your seniors. So it went up to $65,000, and there is something in the works now. It hasn't been passed yet, but there is something in the works now where they're trying to increase that to 70 or 75. So that's, well, hey, we got to take baby steps before we get to the 100. Well, let's try to get to that 75 first. So that's one thing that we're trying to work on too for our seniors, because you do have instances where you may have kids and things like that that are staying with you. And if your son is a disabled veteran with your brother, okay? If he's your brother, let me finish. If he's your brother and he's a disabled veteran with a service-related disability, then you need to, if he is not, is he or is he not?
He had a disability, but I don't know if it's
Okay, so then that doesn't count. If he's on the deed, you can get a disabled person's exemption on there, as well as the homeowner's exemptions if you add your brother to the deed. So that's something to keep in mind. Let's go on this side. Yes, ma'am? I need you guys to keep it down so we can hear everybody, so we can help everyone. Yes, ma'am? Okay. No, I said 10,000 in assessed value. Yes, ma'am.
So that's how, if my assessed value went up, and I said 10,000, how come it's down $500?
Okay, so in some cases, the calculation could be wrong. She asked, why did it fluctuate, her exemption? It could be an error, or the value of your property has increased. And if the value of the property increased, then your exemption, you would think it would probably go up. But in some cases, it has gone down. Okay? So if you did that calculation that I showed you guys, the 10,000 times your level of assessment, if that's an error, you need to fill out the certificate of error form with the assessor to get your value changed. Yes, back in the back. Talk super loud. Okay, so she said her tax rate dropped 3%.
We'll get together.
Correct. Right. So, yes, you do. There are instances where the tax rates have gone down in the past, certain ones in the past couple of years. But another thing that you guys want to think about is also what needs to happen is a cap. It needs to be a cap put on the assessments so that they don't rise over a certain percentage every year. It needs to be some type of cap, because there is no cap right now. All right, there's a lot of stuff that's going on. Let me see if I can find this slide really quick. For instance, this property in Tinley Park on Pine Point Drive, 1,700 square feet. They purchased in 2026 for $177,000. I'm sorry, 2016, forgive me. And the value in 2020 was $194,000. In 2023, it went up to $300,000. They didn't do any improvements. They didn't add a dormer or any more square footage. This is an issue. This is an issue. And as long as there is no cap, these are things we were going to have to deal with. So these are things, when I tell you, you have to get more involved. You have to hold your state reps and senators accountable and let them know we need some type of caps in play. Also, too, you guys, I'm going to get some more questions. You guys remember during COVID when Assessor Fritz Cavey gave you COVID relief? You guys remember that? Everybody was through the roof. Oh, I got a break. And then what happened the next year? It went back up. So whatever you got the break on, you lost that the next year. So being that he can do a COVID relief, it was like a blanket of 10 to 11%, between 7 and 11%, depending on where you live. He can do something like that again. He can do that. But also, like I say, we have to get those things on the books for our legislators to really find legal ways to put this in writing so that we can have a cap, so that people can stay in their homes. Because we're getting to the point where things are no longer available. You have senior citizens whose homes are paid off, and you're struggling to pay a tax bill on a fixed income. So this is stuff that is far beyond just here in this room. There are many things that we as a community need to do, and we need to get to those budget meetings. We need to talk to our state reps and things to talk about getting a cap placed on the assessments so that they're not rising as much. Yes, sir, in the back. The assessor does the assessment and puts the values on every property in Cook County. Who does it? The Cook County assessor, Fritz Kage's office. That's the other thing that's been coming out. I know you guys have been seeing all the articles and exposés. He has not come into the field and viewed houses. They haven't done it even before he became assessor, since 1997. Okay? So, hold on. So, what they use is a system called GIS, which you're looking like an overview, like you're in an airplane and you're just looking down on the properties and using those to measure. And in some cases, they may or may not still use plats of survey. So those are things that they're doing, which they have the capacity to do that and do field checks. So that's something that has been brought up to him and his organization to start. Maybe you want to go out to these properties and do a survey of the area. So yes, sir, I agree with you. They're not using that. They're using technology.
How can they base it if they haven't come out and looked at the house? They sent me an assessment. My daughter's car from 15 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah. You need to talk to Fritz Kage. He's the one doing that. That's not us. I agree. 100%.
Before the people buy the people.
That's right. I agree with you. Yes, ma'am.
Besides the local tax rate.
The local tax rate, again, is determined by what your village, city, town needs to operate. As the mayor said, you guys said the majority of your taxes go to the schools. The other thing that we discussed at another meeting, people were like, well, what's up with the lottery money? The lottery money is supposed to, go to the schools. But guess what? It goes into a fund. And some of the money goes to the school and other is somewhere else. These are other things that we need to bring up to our legislators about that, because the way the lottery is played and the way the money comes up, it should have enough to help the deficits in some of these areas. Yes, sir.
Long-term residency exemption.
Okay, so he asked about the long-term homeowners exemption. So that exemption is still in place, but it's very, very hard to get now. So one of the things that you need to qualify for, two things most people qualify. You have to live in your property for 10 years or longer. Your total household income has to be $100,000 or less. But this is the kicker. Your assessment has to have gone up for 7 years in a row by a certain percentage. So say for instance, for 4 years your assessment went up steadily. And then the 5th year you appeal and you got a reduction. Now you're starting back over at year 1. So they've also been in the talks about trying to make some changes to that exemption so that more people can be able to take advantage of it. Because that exemption, really, they brought that into play at the height of the market, when the market crashed in like 2005 and stuff, when people were overpaying for homes and stuff and losing. They kind of put that in play to give some relief. So that exemption is still available, but it's very difficult to get. Yes, sir.
If you're filing just a plain vanilla residential appeal, is there any value to having a lawyer do it versus what we're doing here?
So he asks, even if you're doing just a plain residential appeal, is it more beneficial to have an attorney? No. And if they win, they're going to take a 33 1/3 or whatever you want. So I would say do it yourself. Okay? Of course, as I said, there are instances where you need an attorney if you have a commercial property or even residential property that's in an LLC or business entity. Yes, ma'am?
I'm sorry. Just a quick follow-up. You say that you're going to do the work for us.
Correct. So he said, if we're gonna do the work for him, is the attorney gonna be doing the same thing? And that's yes. They're gonna be looking at sales data, comparative properties to see what they can, do the same way in which we do. Yes, ma'am.
Because we have all different townships in here,
Mhm.
are you guys separating out the Bremen folks because we closed earlier?
Everything, I'm gonna take care of everything, yes. Everything will be done. So regardless to if you're in Bremen, Rich, or Orland, we will take them in, and Bremen will be turned in by the deadline of September the 3rd. So you don't have to worry about missing anything. Everything will be in timely if you leave it here with me. Also, the other thing, if you decide to take your form home and mail it in, make sure if you're in Bremen, don't wait until September 3rd to put it in the mailbox. Because if it is not postmarked by the 3rd, we will not accept it. All right? Yes, ma'am.
My question is, I live in a townhouse community. There's different sizes of condos throughout the community of 240 condos. My unit is the smallest at 1196 square feet. There are 23 units like mine. Every one that I check is assessed lower to mine.
Okay, so when people, is the tax bill or the assessment lower? Because also, too, the thing I tell people to think about, you may be like, my next door neighbor, we got the same exact house, and they're paying less. They can have different exemptions or things that you may not be able to get. So what we would do is, being that you're in a townhome complex, we will separate the units out. So you may have, one unit, this is the Canterbury unit. This is the Jones unit. We're going to take those units that are within that 1,100 square foot range and group those together. And we will use those as comparable properties for you.
But I did not compare to mine. I compared to the new assessment that we have received.
I don't know what he did. I couldn't tell you. But if you give us a...
I checked, I was able to check for it. I'm sorry, but this site is terrible. It just doesn't answer the question. It works for some addresses, not for others.
Right.
So the four I was able to get, they're all assessed lower than I am.
That's the issue with the assessor's office, that he may have made a mistake, whatever the case may be. But we will take a look at that as well to see if there's room for a reduction. And like I said, if there's room for a reduction, we will give it to you. And if we don't see anything, we'll leave you alone. We see it should be raised, we will not touch it. Reduction or no. Yes, ma'am.
If commercial property owners are always fighting abuse and winning, do the resident property owners, they don't make a difference?
So this was something which is a false statement that the assessor was sending out to people, okay? Commercial owners are taxed at 25% compared to residential homeowners, okay? Also, too, if you own a commercial property, don't you have the right to appeal? You should have the right to appeal, too. So we're going to look at everyone. And in some cases, just how you guys were like the assessor raised you guys 150% from last year. Can you imagine what they're doing to those commercial property owners? We had one building, a commercial property, that the assessor raised them by 20 million in value. Okay? 20 million, right? We gave them a reduction of 5 million, and he was like, oh yeah, the board did this, but you raised them 20. And they still got a 15 million% increase, So we have to look at everything totally. It's not the case. Also, too, when you say, like, for instance, are you getting more of the burden? Think about the exemptions. People who are getting exemptions, they're getting a break. So that is being spread out as well. So it's being spread out through the commercial and the residential. It's not unfair. Like, we're not doing it at a higher percentage for the commercial properties. And their burden of proof to receive a reduction is 10 times higher than it would be for you guys as homeowners. Yes, sir? We're gonna get some more questions. Just bear with me, guys. You're next.
I'm okay with the assessed value of the property. That's not an issue. For me, it's paying more than twice as much for the school district. That's kind of, I have no control over that. What he says about the fees,
So he asks, is it even worth his while to file an appeal if the only issue he has is the amount of money that's going for taxes? That's a choice that you make. If some people are like, they don't want to reduce the value of their home because they may want to sell. And you don't want that value to drop. But if you're not planning to sell anytime soon, fill out the appeal. You can still get some type of relief. Either we'll give you some or leave you alone. Yes, ma'am. Square footage, living area above grade, age, classification, and location. You said what? No, we don't care about the number of rooms. We care about the square footage. So as long as your square footage is correct, that's what we're going to work with. Now, if there's a discrepancy in your square footage, then that's something different. You want to give us an appraisal or a plat of survey so that we can correct that square footage issue. Yes, sir.
Let's go back to the local tax rate. That local tax rate went down in Orland Township by 2 to 3%. I was figuring my taxes on last year's local tax rate, and my taxes were going to go up about $4,300 in Tinley. Well, when the tax bill came out, and I noticed that the tax rate went down by 2.5%, that lowered my taxes. It also lowered the homeowner exemption, and it lowered the senior exemption. People don't realize that their exemptions were lowered, but that's actually a good thing because their taxes would have been way more if that tax rate would have been based off last year's taxes. So my taxes were like $2,000 instead of $4,000. But what I'm concerned is, how are these local tax rates really figured out? Because next year, if that local tax rate goes from like 9% back to 11 or 12%, my taxes are going to go up $2,000 again next year.
Right. So what did we say that we need to do? You got to be present for those budget things. And then think about it. If you think some townships, if some of you are paying on your tax bill for multiple school districts, right? Multiple. These are just mind questions to ask. Do you need 3 schools? Are all 3 schools at capacity? You know what I mean? Do you need all these different things going on? These are things and conversations that need to be had. But as long as, like you say, you have the budget, and this year they may not have increased, but maybe next year they may be asking for another $2 million for the schools. And that's a possibility that it could go up.
Is the local tax rate based mainly on schools?
Schools, fire, police, water reclamation, park districts, all of those things that make your city, village, town run. Back there in the hat with the orange hat.
My question is, I've been in this village for about 20 years, of the rich township, and every year we get assessed, every year we pay. No problem.
Every 3 years you get reassessed.
Yes, every 3 years. But somehow, something happened this past year that all of a sudden the entire Cook County, especially this southwest suburb, have all been over-assessed. So I want to understand what happened. Is there a new software? Did they have this new idea all of a sudden? Hey, let's give everybody decrease, we need more budget. What's the motivation? What changed?
I don't work for Fritz Kage's office, so I can't say what his reasoning is behind that. But one thing, there was an issue with the system that he had as far as it being compatible with our office, which kind of slowed down some of the prior years. But to be perfectly honest, the numbers and the way he's coming with these numbers has been like a secret society. We don't know, I'm being honest. We don't know where they're coming from. Like I say, increasing the land values, lowering the building values, messing up the exemptions. Your guess is as good as mine. I don't know where the values are coming from. It's definitely skewed, and it's definitely a problem. So, like I say, I can't answer for that. You guys may want to have your mayor to come and offer the assessor to come out to kind of talk to you guys about that, and maybe he could answer that better. But I'm a totally different department, and I can't tell you what systems and things that he used to come up with these ridiculous values. Yes, in the back.
All right, I have a comment and I have a question.
Okay.
My comment is that as you can see, these letters that we've gotten have messed up the quality of life within our county. That's my comment. My question is, you recently said that the first bills that came out were basically screwed until the reviews come in, and hopefully we'll see a reduction on the second installments.
Correct. Your next year's step. Yes, correct.
So my question is, obviously we're screwed for the first year. My question is, once this all hopefully gets settled and corrected and the assessments get back together, is the Board of Review, do you guys get to send out refunds right away, or is that another process?
Okay, so great question. So the Board of Review, we do not send money back. What happens with us is, as I told you guys, our decision affects your second installment tax bill. So if you get a reduction from us, that will be deducted from the second installment tax bill. Now, if you fill out a certificate of error with the assessor's office for an error that has been made, that's when you will get money back in the 60 to 90 day period for anything that you overpaid. So, the other thing, file an appeal every year. Even though you get reassessed every 3 years, file an appeal every year, once with the assessor and once with the Board of Review. Okay? So say for instance you file with the assessor's office and they give you a minor reduction. You may come to us and we may give you further reduction. So if you have the opportunity for 2 people to look at it, I would say do that every year. The other thing that you may want to do, we have, how many of you have heard of the Property Tax Appeal Board, PTAB? Anybody heard of PTAB? All right, PTAB is another option that you have after us at the Board of Review. So say you got the decision from us and you were dissatisfied and wanted it to be looked at more, you can appeal to the Property Tax Appeal Board, and you have 30 days from the decision you received from us to file an appeal with the Property Tax Appeal Board. So that's 3 instances where you can actually file an appeal. Now the Property Tax Appeal Board, their process takes much longer. It could take maybe 6 months or so for their decision or longer, but that is something else that you guys do have available. Because you might get a reduction.
How do you know when to do it every year with both parties?
Are you going to sign up for our texting service? Sign up for the texting service, or you can always check the Board of Review website. With these property taxes, you have to stay ready. You have to. Always remember too, the first time to appeal with the assessor will always be before us. All right? You can always go to their website to check things, but you have to be proactive and check. That's why we have the texting service or the website. So I would say, at least in January, you need to start looking at the assessor's office to see what's up with filing an appeal and making sure your exemptions are done. So I would say at least try to look at those things starting in January. Yes, ma'am?
I just have a question. I know you said you feel like you get flood, water, fire damage, whatever, right?
when we had the storm was in May, a lot of people had tremendous damage to the house from the storm that came through. Does that count?
Was it in 2024?
Yeah, it was this year.
Yes.
So does that count because, you know, a lot of people are still waiting for their insurance adjuster, fixing the house, whatever. So if you came to.
Do you have a claim number?
Yes, I.
Okay, so.
I had very extensive damage to my house.
So we
what do I do
want your insurance claim.
Okay.
We want pictures of the damage.
Okay.
Once you guys get the estimate of what the total damage is, as much details as you have, not your original copies, but send us copies of all of those things. And then what we can do is make adjustments for 1 year only for that. Some people may have gotten, I don't think this year they made it like a disaster thing where you were getting FEMA money. I know they did that in 2023, but in 2024, I don't believe that's the case yet. So insurance claims, pictures, fire reports if it's a fire, all of those things as evidence of the damage.
I turned in my thing there, so do I just go on your website and submit my pictures and stuff like that?
Or you can mail it in, but you need to wait until you get your complaint number. So once you gave us these forms, we're going to take them back into the office and you're going to get a unique complaint number, which is your filing number. Once you get that filing number, then you'll be able to go online and go ahead and submit that or mail it in if you so choose.
Okay. So
All right?
I'm just like my adjuster's report, all the damage files, the lots, all that. Just
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you. And so what happened this year?
2024 only. 2024 only. Yes, sir?
I have a question. When the assessor's office gives a homeowner a refund on their taxes, is that refund spread amongst all the Cook County residents?
Well, it depends who's getting the refund. The homeowner's going to get whatever the refund. So if they say you overpaid $1,000, they'll give you a check for $1,000. You can either, if you still are paying on your home, you can put that back into your escrow, or
Does the county take that money and spread that refund amongst all the
He's
taxes?
asking if someone, wins their case.
Yeah.
The county's not gonna lose money. So how is that difference made up by the county? Is it true that that's passed on to all the millions of people that are property taxes?
so there's some other stuff that comes into play. You know, it's a bowl of grits, I guess. So in some let me see. I want to show you guys something else. Okay, so how many of you all have heard of the recapture law? Anybody heard? Okay, she's ready. She knows about this. So in 2021, the tax code was rewritten to allow the schools, your local governments, to recover money that people got on their refund for the money that was taken out of their budget and put them at a deficit. Okay? Now, this recapture law was brought up by some of the representatives in Southern Illinois. Now, you guys, I know you guys were hearing about the things where they want to separate us, like the city of Chicago from Illinois. They want us out, right? They proposed this, and I think when they initially brought it in, they really wanted to help. But it ended up not being the best. So say one school district that you didn't go to the meeting for passed a budget for $3 million, right? And then there were reductions given to taxpayers. You went to PTAB. Remember I was telling you guys about the Property Tax Appeal Board? You went to PTAB, you got a reduction. So that money was taken from them. They're at a deficit now. Their budget was $3 million, so now they're $1 million short. They're going to come back and get that $1 million. And guess where it's coming from? The next tax year. So mind you, 2023 tax, and you already got the tax bill. It's already out there. You know what you owe. Everything is null and void. So they'll come back and say, we're at a deficit, and that's going to affect 2024. These are things you want to talk to your legislator about. So this whole process is so multifaceted, and I try to give you guys as much information. Commissioner Rogers wants to make sure that we give you as much as you can, so you can know the things that are changing, so you can know some of the stuff that are on the books, so you guys can bring these things up. We can't do this alone. We can't change this legislation. All right? Next, yes ma'am. And we're going to take a couple more questions and get you guys out of here. Yes ma'am?
I received a letter from the assessor's office saying that my property was overassessed. And that I would actually get a revised tax bill. I've yet to receive it. And it's somewhat of a reduction, but it's still high because from 2019 to 2020, they jacked up my taxes $5,000. And I can't go back, and I've actually talked to them, at least my second question. Number one is, when am I going to get the revised bill? Second thing is, when they actually jacked up, I talked to different attorneys, I talked to the board of review, I talked to everybody, but when that increased in 2020, what can I do? And they said, because the housing in the area, they've all basically gone up, yours is just going up with the rest. I said, my house is a 1928 house. The surrounding houses are newer. My house is not comparable to the other ones. What do I do if my house doesn't compare to the other ones?
So again, I'm not sure what the situation was when you filed before, but we look at those things at the Board of Review. What was your first question? Okay, I don't know when you're going to get that revised tax bill because, again, I don't work for the assessor's office. One thing I do know is that they're behind because they're having to correct so many issues, so they're probably behind on that. The other thing, too, is if they issue you a corrected tax bill, then you don't pay that overage, right? No, I'm just saying, you won't pay that. But until they give you that, you're still going to be on the hook for the original tax bill that they gave you. I'm just saying, it's not right. They should have already given it to you. What I would recommend is, what township are you in? Bremen. Go to the Markham Courthouse. They didn't give you a corrected one there?
No. They were no help.
I don't know what to say because they should have been able to do that unless they're getting instruction to not do that, which, like I say, I can't speak to. The other option would be to go all the way down to City Hall and go to the main office and go ahead and sit there. Now, they can definitely do that unless it's past the statute of time when they can issue that. Because there are some limits in when they can issue those corrected tax bills. It still may be a date. Like I say, you would have to check with them because I honestly couldn't tell you. Okay? Yes, ma'am. These are going to be the last couple questions. Okay, you're next. Go ahead. Yes, ma'am.
How would I go about starting a petition so we can send it to our reps?
Well, one person, I feel like you can definitely talk to your mayor. Mayor could help you guys get something together, may be able to, put something somewhere, because I know the mayor said they were at the Oak Park Station passing out forms. So maybe that's something that can be done. And I feel my opinion would be if you guys get at least like 10,000 signatures, I feel like that's like a really good start to let them know, hey, these people are serious. They really want some change. They want some stuff to move around and be changed. So that's my recommendation. Yes, ma'am?
You mentioned a disabled person's exemption. Can that be applied for on the assessor's website?
Correct.
Do I have to prove my disability?
Yes.
How do I do that?
So once you go to the assessor's website, you'll click on exemptions. Once you go down on that exemptions tab, you will click on disabled person's exemption. Once you do that, they will give you like a full description of everything you need. You're most likely, if it's a short-term or long-term ailment, you'll be able to take that form to your doctor, your specialist to say what your ailment is, and then submit that. If you're receiving disability funds, you know, from the government, you can use that as evidence as well. But once you go to the assessor's website, you'll get a full description of everything you need to apply.
Thank you.
All right, and this is going to be our last 2 questions. Yes, ma'am?
I promise you this is a very light, lovely question. So, folks that filled out the paperwork and were interested in doing it online, will that cancel?
Yes. So she asked if you guys want to go home and you decide you want to file online, you can definitely do that. And this appeal here would just cancel out. So then you start to be able to track everything the way I was telling you guys before. Yes. And who was my last question? Yes, ma'am. Yes. So her question is, she has a condominium, it's 4 units, and they're different sizes. With the condominium, it's a little more difficult to make changes because you have a condo declaration, which is a binding legal agreement. So each of your units is given a percentage of ownership per each unit. So we're going to look within your building at the sales. And even for those bigger units, we'll still calculate based on your percentage, not just theirs. The sales in your building, yes. In your building, yes. But since you have 4 units, if you didn't have sales, we would do a comparative analysis if we found a building that was similar to yours with similar percentages of square footage. All right? So everybody, we're going to go ahead and close this out. We do have some staff in the back and staff outside that can answer any small questions that you may have. If you have your forms, you can give them to me. Ricardo back there, Safe right there in the purple shirt. All of us can accept your forms. Thank you guys for coming. We appreciate you.